Now that the month of March is almost over, I bring you a slightly different program. It's not a game, it's a software to make games. The Shoot 'em Up Construction Kit.
RetroKork.
The SEUCK, as it's also called, allows everyone to attempt creating the next big shooting game, provided it's going to look a lot like Galaga, Galaxian, or Konami's 1942. Oh, and you don't get bonus weapons. Instead you get to create sound effects, intro screens, and the ability to create a two-player mode. Well, in the standard version at least, since quite a few hobby programmers have worked on modifying both the game engine and adding other possibilities for features like, for example, having the ability to add music. But still, it's kinda limited in its abilities. But you can nevertheless create interesting games, and some people have made games that aren't really shooting games per se. And they're only limited by the fact that this software doesn't have a programming language and everything is done with menus and moving the joystick around, except when you have to enter words. So just to show you how this program is used, I'm going to make a really short space shooter. So first we start with the blank SEUCK title, that is, if we want to have virtually no assets from anywhere else to use. It's the equivalent to a white page in Word or Writer if you use LibreOffice or OpenOffice. So let's create a baddie and a second player just to be sure. As you may notice, every sprite can have up to 3 colors, though you are able, for the enemies at least, to lay them over each other. One color is unique to each sprite, and you can basically create a lot of baddies just by doing some color changing. Now that we have the bad guy sprite, we need to assign him to the logic. That is, we need him to be considered a baddie for the game. But first we have to make him an object. Now that we've assigned him as a bad guy and have decided upon his shot graphic, we could edit his background, the backgrounds going behind the screen, behind the game. But I'm not really good at that, so yeah, I'll pretty much skip that. Next up is the sound. I just set a few sound effects, or I could just rely on the basic ones already in place. Using those sliders, I can modify those. After that, I can decide to limit the player regarding movement, forcing the player to either stay on the bottom of the screen or allow a wider range of freedom. Since it's kinda technical and a bit boring, to be honest, I don't think I'll need to show you that. Also, in this mode you can set the amount of lives available, as well as the ability to gain bonus lives by reaching a score high enough. The next bit is where you can set the attack waves. That is where you basically place the enemies on the screen. So basically you play the enemy's path blindly. Finally, you can set the levels, but that's really dry business. I mean, it's really, you can choose static screen, moving screen, but it's great if you intend on creating, say, a boss fight screen. In that case, you just set that level to be static. And finally, you can change the title screen, the front end. You can edit the character set as well as change the name of the game. And if you're really great, you might be able to even add some kind of drawing to it all. The next stop is Test Game, which does as expected. It allows you to test the game before it's converted into a playable program that you can store in your floppy disk. By the way, if you're wondering, I wrote that while I was working on the game, so it was work, right. As I said already, this is kind of limited in its abilities, but there have been efforts to produce tools that add music since the final game result. Yeah, it's pretty large a file due to the program is just tossing basically in the entire editor as well. So yeah, there's a program called SEUCK Buster, SEUCK Buster, that allows you to add music in a limited fashion to the game. Also, in 2008, a programmer by the name of John Wells has begun modifying the engine, allowing for it to create side-scrolling games instead of top-down shooters. Still shooters, but you get to have it scroll horizontally instead of vertically. There are many ways to enhance games created with SEUCK, but if you're interested in that, well, I'm just growing a bit because I'm going to put a link down here, probably right about now. If you're interested in finding out in which way you can improve and enhance the game, like say adding a high score list that is stored, well, I suggest you look it up on the internet, starting at SEUCK Vault, that's one word, .co.uk. The link should be on the screen right now as well. Also, aside the Commodore 64 version, there has been a Commodore Amiga version, which also was limited to 16 colors, even though Amiga is graphically more capable. There's one for the Atari ST, as well as an unofficial PC remake, which you can find at this URL, at least at the time I was writing and filming this episode. SEUCK.glbasic, that's one word, glbasic.com. I personally am not really that good with this software, and admittedly I never really was, but I enjoy creating silly little games that aren't worth a release simply because they're pretty badly done. If however you produce a more awesome game, and unfortunately as this episode goes up, the contest from SEUCK Vault, I think it was them, there was a contest going on that actually ended today, so yeah. But if you produce a more awesome game, which you most likely are capable of, if you produce something you're proud of and that you want to show me, well, feel free to let me know, either via my blog, projectkork.blogspot.com, or via Twitter at RetroKork, or if there's any other way. And now, if you want to, enjoy your first steps into creating something that I'm sure is amazing. Next time I'm going to talk about a modern Commodore 64 game. Yes, modern games for the Commodore 64 do exist. So yeah, next time I'll be talking about Nanako in Classic Japanese Monster Castle. I believe that's its title. Oh, I'll just probably call it Nanako.